everybody. Jeff here for JeffDeWitt.com. I'm Jeff. Jeff's only got a single F in it, remember that. This video is about coming out sober, owning it, taking it public, why it matters to me. I'm also going to address the role of shame in addiction because it's a powerful contributor. And I'm going to talk about how I learned to fight back. So before I begin though, let me stress something that's very important. Everyone's journey is their own. So trust your own instinct, trust your own experience. I have found that keeping this part of my life private, it's had unintended consequences. My very first blog post was about discovering that not speaking out about this, about my sobriety, reinforced the shame I felt about my addiction. I want to talk about the role of shame for a little bit. Not to get too deep in the weeds about it, but it's this huge part, it's this huge motivator of human behavior on so many different levels. For me, I felt shame long before I ever developed a problem. In fact, I'm sure it contributed to me becoming an addict in the first place. And then I felt shame for having an addiction. And I held on to that shame long after I got clean. One of my biggest triggers in recent memory was avoiding alcohol with my ex-girlfriend's family. My ex was very supportive, so was her family, but I feared what her family would think about me if I admitted that I don't drink at all. I wondered what they would think about my past if they knew I was alcohol-free. Why? So I danced around the topic and I felt shame. It only contributed more to the shame I felt. Shame contributed to the way I acted at work too. I'm a human with imposter syndrome. Add shame into the mix and it just takes those feelings and puts them on steroids. Imposter syndrome gets supercharged. You don't feel like you belong. So how do you fight this shame anyway? You've heard me talk about this before. Acceptance is the opposite of shame. This took me a very long time to understand. If you've watched my previous videos, you've seen me touch on the power of acceptance. So what is acceptance? It's allowing things to just be without trying to solve them, right? Without having to believe in them. I tried to earn my way out of shame. I tried a lot of different ways to adapt to it. I tried to solve it. You can't solve shame. But I thought that if other people recognized the good in me, I would see it in myself. I hoped that external achievement would fix the internal way that I viewed myself. So I worked to make up for and amend the choices that I had made in the past. I tried so hard to do this for so long. I became obsessed with my career, with my fitness, with my relationships. I wrote these long to-do lists, wrote all of these goals down, and I achieved a lot of them. But guess what? The shame was still there. It never went away. I got the job I always wanted. Didn't matter. I got the girlfriend. I thought I was the perfect boyfriend. Didn't matter. Still felt shame. Finally, when I got desperate enough, I just gave up trying to fight it. I realized it was never going anywhere. I realized that I had been waiting for those feelings to go away, for the shame to go away before I allowed myself to feel like I belonged. That was never going to happen. I was never going to feel like I belonged. This was the beginning of acceptance. Then I read this book. It's called Happiness Trap by Russ Harris. I've talked about this before. But this book was really impactful for me. It taught me strategies for acceptance that really, really worked. And it gave me some clarity around shame, about how shame was controlling my behavior. It was a self-limiting feeling, belief. It limited what I thought was possible for me. And it was necessary for me to come out in a public way because it is part of the process of acceptance for me. It was about feeling normal about it, normalizing, making things seem more routine. Without coming out publicly, I felt that I was feeding my shame. I was tacitly agreeing that it should remain in the shadows, that I shouldn't talk about it. And you've heard me talk about what happens when you start shooting everywhere. I understand this approach doesn't work for everybody. I get that. I promote owning sobriety to fight stigma. The more of us that come forward and own this part of our lives, the better it is for all of us. Not just for the sober people, but for the perception of others. It changes how they perceive us when we're more open about it, and we offer ourselves up as examples of people in recovery. But again, I understand that this is a personal choice for many, many people, and they have their own approach. It's much more personal than mine. I'm not criticizing anybody for remaining private about their lifestyle. This is their path. This is their journey. I support them. Anonymity is an integral part of substance abuse recovery programs. That was really tough for me to say. Like AA, CA, NA, all the A's. And there's a myriad of reasons for this. It protects your identity, it protects your livelihood, your personal relationships, prevents you from profiting off your affiliations. Because there's risk in doing this. I've had people openly discourage me from making public posts about my sobriety, telling me that it didn't belong in the professional sphere. I couldn't disagree more. It is a personal issue, but it also has professional ramifications. Based on research by the National Institutes of Health, upwards of 25% of adults in the US have experienced addiction at some point in their lives. I think that means it's broadly applicable. An issue that affects 25% of us, a quarter of the grown-up population in the US, sounds like a pretty public issue to me. It has professional consequences. And then there's the discussion around the changing nature of employment, where a lot of us work round the clock or remotely instead of the traditional offices. So there's a blurring of the lines between our professional and personal lives. And of course, the pandemic has exacerbated mental health issues. A lot of us are coming forward now in ways we didn't do before. For me, a public approach is in alignment with some deep values I have. It is. So, acceptance is super important to me. Well, anonymity perpetuates stigma. It's sort of aiding and abetting shame. It is. If you keep it hidden, you can't own it. It's disempowering. If you're a member of one of the big anonymous groups, then at least you still get acceptance within those groups, right? You can identify with other club members and feel like you belong. Within that group, you don't feel stigmatized. You feel normal, understood. That's great. You know you're not alone if you are affiliated with those anonymous groups. But if you're not in one of those groups, what then? Or if you have a fringe addiction that doesn't fit within the boundaries of one of those existing organizations, what about that? Where can you turn to for acceptance? For, camaraderie, brotherhood? What are you supposed to do? This last point is more about the current zeitgeist. We live in a society that's changing. It increasingly promotes inclusivity. My work here is in concert with that effort. The more of us that live out loud about this as positive examples of life and recovery, the better it's going to be for the ones that come after us. It's like we're paying our dues. When people feel safe to come forward, when people aren't afraid to ask for help, for fear of what other people might think when they hear them, isn't that better for everybody, for all of us? That's why I'm doing this. It's that simple. It's living by example. I want to talk to you like I know you, right? So I just want to reiterate one more time that everybody's got their own style, their own technique. I'm not criticizing anybody for being more private with their lifestyle. If they're sober, if they have issues or battling and they want to do this stuff on their own or within the context of those anonymous groups I mentioned before, I respect that. This works for me. This seems appropriate for me. I'm only speaking on my own behalf from a perspective that is informed from the experiences I have had. So I just want to point that out. I want to clarify that. I want to make sure I don't step on anybody's toes, because I'm not saying this is the way to do it. I'm saying this is the way that I do it, and these are the reasons why. If you have any topics you want me to discuss or suggestions, please leave them in the comments section below. Oh, Like, subscribe, and share this video. Thanks.